Battlegrounds of the gods are torn asunder pretty much every day by you, me, and various other players of the Smite community. Be it in the dark lands of the Assault map, the mysterious jungle of the Siege map, or the great Colosseum of the Arena map. But why do the gods in Smite fight? Why is it that we log into these 30, 40, 50, or gods forbid 60-minute conquest games, only to kill a titan and a few members of the enemy team and then leave just to do it again and again and again? Today, I'm going to try and answer this question. Also, spoilers ahead for the Smite comic book series. If you haven't read it yet or intend to read it, you should probably click out now, go ahead and catch yourself up with that series, and then come back here. Let's get into this. To begin with, we have to understand the relationship between the followers of the gods, the humans, or us, and the gods themselves. The relationship between us and the gods is pretty similar to how it is in the real world. In fact, it's exactly the same. We pray to the deities, give them offerings and our respect. In return, they offer us whatever that specific god may be offering in return. For example, Chunga offers her followers beauty. Now, whilst the gods themselves are individually powerful, they do gain an increase in status and power in relation to how many followers or worshippers they have. A nice example of this is Loki is pretty weak, and it's very well known that he does not have a lot of followers and worshippers, whereas Zeus is a very well-known god who had many followers, and it's one of the reasons why in the Smite comics he's stronger than Hades. They have a little back and forth after a bit of a scuffle that Hades had with Anubis, and Zeus explains this, or points this out rather. And so in Smite, there you have a reason for fighting. The more games you win with a particular god, the more worshippers you gain, the stronger that god is for you, really. Even Loki. Which flies directly in the face of the statement that Loki doesn't get any worshippers. I like Loki, for instance, but it is what it is. Of course, there are characters like Xing and Bellona, and of course the example that the comic gives off, Ares, who just naturally love to fight. And these characters will look for any reason they can to have anything from a simple duel to causing outright war. Ares, for example, leapt at the chance to go ahead and do battle with the Egyptian pantheon. Also in the comics, we get an explanation as to how respawning is actually canonical. See, the many gods of the underworld, when any sort of being dies, if they're a god for instance, the god of the underworld has to claim their essence or soul. I'm assuming that any god of the underworld can, but let's say if you die in the territory of Hades, I'm assuming he has a greater chance to claim your soul. But not necessarily, because all of the gods who die in the comic universe end up within Hades' realm, but I'm just assuming that that's because Hell gave Hades all of these souls to play with, because they had an agreement, and that's part of the plot of the story. But also, if Hades were to neglect your soul, and you are left wandering around in these lands without any god to claim your soul, you're essentially just a lone wolf with nowhere to go. This started a conflict at the beginning of the Pantheon War comic, in which Anubis was trying to aid the lost souls that Hades technically should have claimed and placed in the underworld, but didn't. And because Hades neglected these souls, Anubis wanted to take them, and Hades had a problem with this because Hades didn't want Anubis taking his souls. Childish, yes, but there you go. Now, of course, Hades receives all of the dead souls in the comic, and that's because Hell agreed to this and allowed Hades to take all of these souls. But also, it seems like there's a way that perhaps these dead god souls might be able to get out of the realm of Hell. And this kind of explains how you can respawn in Smite. All you have to do is get one of these lords or rulers of the underworld to agree that you can leave. And this also comes up in mythology. The example of Greek mythology that I'll give you when Hades allowed this king, who was not buried properly, to return to the world of the living. It was under specific circumstances. He was only given a certain amount of days to return, and he had to do very specific things with this time, but he would be allowed to live again. Unfortunately, he betrayed Hades and lived out the rest of his natural life, which he was not supposed to do, and when he finally got to hell, Hades punished him by forcing him to, every day that he was in hell for the rest of eternity, having to push a boulder up a hill. Now, Hell, not to be confused with the realm Hell, the god Hell, rather the goddess Hell, she took the god of light Balder's soul after he died, and when his essence went to Helheim, Hestod rushed over to Helheim because he was the god of speed, he was the fastest one capable of doing so, and also another one of Odin's sons, to plea for his brother's life. Unfortunately, though, Hel was quite fair to Hestod. She simply said, if you can get every single being to say that they love this god, Balder, then she would release him and Ragnarok would be prevented, because the death of Balder was one of the first signs of Ragnarok. However, all beings but one lady refused to say that they loved Balder or refused to shed a tear for Balder, and because of this, Balder, the god of light, stayed in the Helheim, and Ragnarok began. So Hel would have had the power to release the soul, which explains how you can respawn in Smite. Every time you die, you're simply just having one of the gods or goddesses of the underworld release your soul back into wherever realm of the battlegrounds of the gods you were at. Of course, this does then raise the question, if you're playing Hades, Hel, Osiris, do you have dominion? Okay, maybe less Osiris, maybe more Anubis. Do you have, as the god yourself, dominion over your own life? Can you choose to bring yourself back, or do you need another deity of the underworld to then bring you back to life, to allow your soul safe passage into the realm of the living? Tell me what you think about that in the comment section below. Also, as an added side note, it doesn't seem like the god or the goddess of the underworld, or at least specifically Hades, needed to be within the underworld to then release or accept souls or essences into his realm. Because as soon as Zeus died in the comic, Athena demanded that he release Zeus, but Hades said that he couldn't, and plot, plot, plot. As for when the conflict between Hades and Zeus was resolved, Hades instantly just snapped his fingers or did whatever his soul jazz is, and the souls were taken off to his realm. So that's also another interesting thing to note if you were to think that you'd have all the gods of death that are possibly in Smite: Apwash, Thanatos, Osiris, Anubis, possibly Thoth, Hel, Hades, Zonghui. And if I'm forgetting someone, I'm sure you'll tell me. Have all the deities of death in a game, it wouldn't be impossible for one of them to allow the respawns to work. So there you go, respawns explained. Also, it seems like regardless of whatever your power level is, regardless of however strong you were, if you are dead, then your power level is underneath whatever god of death has you within their realm. So you can't just break out of the underworld just because you're Zeus, for instance, which is another thing to note. The reason why this is all important is because if the gods fighting as much as they do and dying as much as they do shows that really death isn't that much of a big factor in Smite. When you kill a god, another god in Smite, you're not really ending their existences. You're just simply sending them to the underworld, and they're just waiting for another god to bring them back to the realm of the living, just for the cycle to be continued. It's a bit like going to prison, then getting out, and going back to prison, then getting out, going out to prison, getting out, without any side effects from the continued journey to and from. Other than, I don't know, if you were to ever realize this, you'd be bored, fatigued maybe, upset? I have no idea. The gods don't seem to mind, so. Also, another thing is that you have the Greek faction and you have the Roman faction, and you're probably wondering, wouldn't those two work against each other a little bit? Well, the simple explanation is that they are accepted as one and the same faction. It's just the worshippers or some of the gods or goddesses refer to them as different names as they please, and of course they don't really mind this. So in the comics specifically, Hermes, which is Mercury, is usually referred to by Athena and all the goddesses and gods of Olympus as Hermes, but when he travelled to the Northlands, he was referred to as Mercury. So now you're probably wondering, okay, the promise of extra worshippers to enhance your influence within the world or of Smite might be a good reason to fight for some gods, but it doesn't encompass everyone. Certain gods seem like the types to just want to live in peace, such as Chunga, for instance. So why would a goddess like Chunga, who has no interest in wanting to fight, and who probably wouldn't necessarily want to go so far to gain extra worshippers, as she's a fairly beloved deity in and of herself, why would a goddess like her want to join the battlefield? For that, and this is theory time, but the answer to that is simply the favor and the gem system. For whatever reason, these gems and the favor are infinitely valuable to these gods and goddesses. To get them to fight with us, we need to offer them a specific amount of favor, or gems. To get them to dress up in all of these elaborate costumes, to change their skins, or make them look entirely different, we need to pay them a certain amount of gems. To have them wave, or to hear their actual voices, we need to give them favor, or gems. Why is this so valuable to them? Well, your guess is just as good as mine. But that explains why the gods fight. Why? Because the worshippers are extremely valuable to them. More worshippers means more power and more influence within the world of Smite for a god or goddess. Because the favor is very valuable to them, because the gems are infinitely valuable to them, and they can't actually die, and they may as well do it to pass the time, because things get boring around there being a god, watching over mortals make the same mistakes and be kind of annoying. Sometimes you just gotta go out and let off some steam, So, Smite. There is also one last reason that I could possibly think of as to why the gods would want to be fighting. And for this, we have to go back to the conflict between Anubis and Hades. I said that the fighting was a bit childish and silly, but really, it's not when you consider the fact that there are several deities who have several roles that kind of cross over and are essentially the same thing. If you're getting a bad service somewhere, maybe your current internet provider is just sucky, the internet is always slow and laggy, and it's making you drop several kills in Smite, you're not going to stay with that internet provider for very long, you're going to go somewhere else. There's plenty of competition out there. The same mentality applies to the gods. Anubis could have gained a lot more worshippers, meaning a lot more power for him, and they were Hades. That's Hades' power, that's Hades' influence that he would be taking. It loosens his influence within the world of Smite. That's what it comes down to when you have multiple gods and goddesses residing over multiple different things, which is another explanation as to why a god like Chunga, who promises her followers beauty, would have a problem with, say, Freya or Aphrodite, who are the goddesses of those things exactly. So, there you go. They also have to maintain themselves in this race against the other gods and goddesses and make sure that their own followers don't go over to the enemy, or, well, yes, don't go over to the enemy and get their goods there. That also explains why someone from the Egyptian pantheon may be fighting against someone from the Egyptian pantheon as well. They're fighting for self-motivated reasons of greed. They just want more worshippers, they want more prestige within the world so that they can become more powerful, more important beings. That is ultimately what it comes down to when you have multiple gods and goddesses residing over the same thing, with a limited supply of worshippers or people interested in their services and their existences. Take today. No one really worships Zeus today. Why do you think that is? What do you think the gods truly fear more than anything else? Becoming obsolete. And that, my friends, makes worshippers, makes favor, makes gems immortally valuable. Well, there you have it. That's my explanation as to why the goddesses and gods in Smite are battling each other every day under our command. If you enjoyed the video and feel like it deserves it, then go ahead and leave a like. If you didn't enjoy it, well, the dislike button is unfortunately an option as well. But tell me what you think about this in the comment section below. Why is favor and gems so valuable to the gods? Or perhaps it's of no value to them, and there's some other reason why these gods are clashing and constantly fighting. Or perhaps merely it's just for the worshippers. They're worshipper addicts. Tell me in the comment section below your thoughts, and thank you very, very much for making it to the end of the video. Until the next one, I've been Prime, have yourself an excellent weekend, and I'll see you in a few. Bye bye.